Welcome out to another episode of It's All Been Checked Before. This time, Redemption, season finale. So you know what's coming up next. In order, next week. Not next. What I'm going to talk about next, you probably know that too. Patreon.com/IEBD. Great way to support us. Great way to support the network. Get extra content. It's so affordable. And we will appreciate and love you so much that you and us will feel redemption on It's All Been Trekked Before.
And welcome out to another episode of It's All Been Trekked Before. Your regular hosts are here.
This is Steven.
And Keith.
Jimmy-Jerome. And we're actually here, not on Zoom.
Yeah.
As our Patreon donors can see on the cell phone camera we uploaded, which may or may not be of good video quality.
It's already ruined.
So we are here to talk about Worf's final episode of Next Gen, Redemption. Well, last year we lost Picard in the season finale. This year we lost Worf.
Yep.
First impressions on Redemption.
It was an appropriate title.
He was redeemed.
Yes. As was the series and everything else. I did not feel disappointed in learning that it was going to be a Klingon-heavy episode, and we got, I think, some good stuff out of it.
Oh, yeah.
I might have switched so far over from the previous Klingon episodes that I was disappointed wouldn't be right. It's a good episode. Definitely enthralling, some really good moments. And, the threat of the Klingon Civil War and all that stuff. There was some, non-interference stuff in there, so it was very Star Trek-y. We missed a lot of the secondary characters, which we've talked about before, when you focus on something like that, which that'll happen. I think that's okay.
Riker had like 2 lines. Other than that, Picard and Worf. Did anybody else even talk? Data had like 1 line.
Yeah, he had a moment, and then the rest of the time it was just...
Geordi, Troy,
Crusher and Troy, they just showed up at the very end for that moment. But yeah.
Which felt odd that they had no lines and didn't say anything, and yet it also would have felt odd had they not been there.
Right.
So it was kind of like a double-edged sword there. I missed having the rest of the crew involved.
I kept waiting for them to be more involved as we went through it, and Guinan made a pop in. So it definitely, obviously I knew it was the final episode, but it felt like a final episode of a season. And I think it was appropriate for the end of this season. So
yeah, I loved the episode. I thought it was fantastic. I think I mentioned before, I'm pretty sure I have not seen this 2-parter, but it lived up to any expectations I had for sure. And it very big cliffhanger of the end of the season. It's going to be probably 6 weeks or more before we start season 2, and I'm going to be anxious to start season 6. 5. 5.
Yes.
I'm going to be anxious. This was the 100th episode of the series.
Yeah.
So it was written by Ron D. Moore, one of our regulars. Apparently he's the Klingon guy on Next Gen. He was seen as really developing the race.
Yeah.
And he wrote Sins of the Father as well, in this whole arc, essentially. But Gene Roddenberry was still around at this point for just a few more months. And he was not happy with this episode at all.
And this is what did him in.
He was very against there being a war on Star Trek, even if it was a Klingon Civil War.
I figured that's what...
And he was very against focusing on Worf for the 100th episode, because he said Worf's not a lead character, he's a secondary character. And it should be on Picard, which I think is him trying to pigeonhole Worf in the same way like Sulu or Chekhov and Uhura. And Next Gen, as Keith and I were talking about before you showed up tonight, was so much more of an ensemble. Worf was very much a lead.
You being Steven and I guess the audience as well, you also weren't there yet.
Yeah, I thought you were, at first it sounded like you were saying he was against them featuring Worf for like the 100th time.
Oh. My guess is that's why Picard has such a central role in this episode, was Roddenberry pushing.
He's got to be.
This is the 100th episode. Your captain has to be featured.
Yeah. And, I think on the earlier episode where Picard went and represented Worf or whatever, it didn't make sense to me. But I feel like, and I've questioned this and now I've stopped questioning it. He's obviously a great ambassador. He's very respected and he's good at what he does. At first I thought his conflict of interest stuff was like, oh, come on. And then I was like, no, that all makes sense.
It does, but I felt like we got a little too much Picard in this episode, to be honest.
Yeah.
I felt like there were times where he was a little bit repeating himself, a little bit contradictory to himself.
Yeah.
And the episode would have been better served by giving the other key characters great moments and reducing the role Picard had.
Yeah.
I guess that bothers me more when I learned the backstage reason for that. It's just, it seems so forced and contrived, and it actually lowers my opinion of earlier TV in general. Just the formulas Like you can even see it happen in something that happened much later, The Office. You know? That show that started off with I don't know how long that went, first 1 or 2 seasons when they just, this is the Michael Scott show, and it just seemed like and then it didn't really
they started to use the rest of their ensemble more.
Right.
Yeah. So we start off this episode with Gowron being installed, and Picard is pushing Worf to correct an injustice. Again, I felt like we didn't need that. Worf could come to that decision on his own.
Mm-hmm. That was my second note. Where is this coming from, Picard? It seems sort of out of character, given especially things he's going to say later on in the episode.
Yeah.
And just the way that they left off in the past. And is that something that you can just... Should we assume that was not Ronald Moore who put that in there, and this is just reflective of people can just throw things like that into one episode?
It could be. I mean, I guess this is really dark, and I don't mean it literally, but I guess we're good that we're close to Roddenberry's death.
Oh, you're going to say it.
No, I really like Gene Roddenberry's vision, but I feel like he kept messing in getting in his own way.
Yeah.
The same way people have criticized George Lucas of doing.
Sure.
So I thought Trek got a lot better once he stopped interfering. Though, to be fair, he did help co-create DS9 before he died.
Well, yeah, it's that thing of he created this world and he had a vision for it, and obviously we wouldn't be on our however many seasons we're on of it if it wasn't an amazing vision and imaginative, but
also short-sighted.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So allowing people to go other places with it, and we're still there. We're still going other places with it.
If Starfleet had been, well, first of all, he said Starfleet's supposed to be like this perfect thing that doesn't infight. But the original series, we constantly saw like crazy captains and commodores get in the way.
Right.
And in Next Gen and DS9 and in the modern shows, they've given a complexity of like, yeah, Picard and his crew are perfect. Starfleet isn't perfect.
Right.
There are politics and everything else involved. And even if you think Picard's perfect, that arrogance is going to rub some people the wrong way because he thinks he's perfect.
Right.
And so what we get later are the layers. And I feel like Roddenberry fought against the layers from what I've read and heard about him.
Yeah.
So there's irony that I wanted to point out earlier. It's funny that you use the term interference. Roddenberry should follow his own prime directive.
Yeah.
With the non-interference clauses.
Well, that's the point. He wanted to follow his prime directive. Everybody kept telling him, no, your prime directive's dumb. Let's expand it.
Yeah, and...
It's double irony.
And in the end, they were right.
I mean, I love the idea of the future being better, and I think that still comes across.
Sure.
But why hinder interesting storylines?
I mean, it's funny to me that here he's fighting against this 2-part Klingon Civil War, which is relatively self-contained among a few characters, and gives Star Trek another 5 years, and we're going to be in a major war where trillions of people are dying.
Well, right. And it's kind of a conflict of interest to reference something in the episode, in that the original series was kind of set up on that Cold War idea, which is still kind of going on. I guess, it was coming to a close about the time of this episode. At least that version of it. Mm-hmm. But, it was, we've talked about how, the Klingons were the Russians kind of, and the Romans were kind of the Chinese or whatever. If you wanted to create that kind of part of the world, and he was against that, but he wasn't against introducing that kind of situation. Balance of Terror, because I have to mention in every episode, that's not a everyone feel good episode.
No.
At all. And that's why it's great. I shouldn't say that's why it's great. That's part of the reason it's great.
It's the only reason why it's great.
Yeah, I think there was also a dynamic here. I couldn't help but think about, like, the Middle East and places where we install a friendly leader. And Picard refusing to get involved and have the Federation install a friendly leader, placing their self-determination over the interests of the colonizers, the Federation. Is definitely like a slap in the face of our politicians at that point.
It took me a while to get my head around it in the sense of, because I was like, well, wait a minute, aren't they all part of the same team? It's like the United Nations. And I was like, wait a minute, no. Yeah. That's exactly how it works, and worked then or whatever, which is...
Picard does not approve of what we did in Iran or Afghanistan.
Right. Yeah, we should stay out of it, but God knows we have not, and... I'm going to say do not.
No.
Right now either.
No.
So.
Still very relevant.
Yeah.
I want to go back to something Steven said before we get too far.
Okay.
About the prime directive hindering the storylines. And I think in some ways it's supposed to do that, to keep them reined in. So it's as a plot device. You might disagree with it sometimes, certainly. Like, sometimes it is a little forced, but other times they needed to keep them from having to just, like, well, why don't they just, like, go and blow up this planet? Or why don't they go and blow, you know.
Yeah. Well, there's a cloud hanging over this episode because you might be able to hear the rain coming down. We'll see. I don't know if you hear it or not, but it sounds pretty loud to me. So back to the very beginning of the episode, as Picard's urging Worf, Picard talks about Worf embracing the human virtue of patience.
Yeah. Is that a human virtue?
No.
It's a virtue.
It's a virtue. Picard has it. Kirk sure does.
Let me tell you, I know a lot of humans who don't.
Right.
And traffic wasn't that bad today coming over, but there's definitely days where my patience is not inherent. That's for sure.
So that is one of the perennial problems with the series as a whole. The way that they try to lump together all positive things, or each human character seems to say, this positive aspect is something that is indicative of being human.
Right.
Sure.
And
we get something later about it.
Well, we get something later, which was Picard's Kirk moment.
Yes.
Just like Kirk talks about Spock being the most human, Picard says Worf has the best humanity or whatever. I didn't write down the exact line.
Yeah.
I wrote down he condescendingly praised Worf with humanity. Your humanity, and goes on to expand on that with several other adjectives that, compassion, etc. But the thing
you could pass for being human. Thanks.
Exactly. So I wasn't sure if humanity is necessarily human or is it just humane, which may be something different than I had to think about that.
I think the writers were still ignorant of their white privilege at this point.
Human privilege.
But yes, that's something else that I tend to bring up in this allegory that they're always presenting to us as us being Americans, us being presumably white, watching this and thinking, yes, this is what all these other cultures are like. We need to make them more like us, or be the bigger people and allow them to not be like us.
Yeah,
that kind of.
Yep. So one other thing Picard says here at the beginning is lies must be challenged, which of course he's talking about the January 6th insurrection.
Of course.
And Trump's big lie about the election.
Obviously.
Lies should be challenged. Unfortunately, half our country believes lies right now, so let's challenge them.
I don't know if they believe them so much as they are okay with using them to an end.
Speaking of that, discommendation, I didn't think it was a real word, but I looked it up. It is a real word.
Yes.
And I think this number is dubious that I found on the internet. It says it's in the top 12% of words. Have you ever heard the word?
What does that mean?
I don't know. Any word? Any language?
Maybe they mean like Scrabble words or something.
But I've never heard the word discommendation other than watching Star Trek and on this podcast right now.
Yeah, I feel like maybe I've heard it in some other contexts before, like in other fiction with military ranks and whatever, but certainly not common.
Well, you know what? I'm going to save my other discommendation comment for later in the episode. I don't want to get too far ahead.
We learn very quickly they talk about women may not serve on the council, which Star Trek Discovery, which takes place 100 years before this, has a female chancellor. So my take on that is...
She ruined it for everyone else?
No. And I swear there was a woman Klingon warrior in the High Council chamber, an extra standing around with the High Council. But my take on that was the High Council at this point is so corrupt and has gone so backwards that now they've disallowed women on the council, whereas they previously were allowed. Because they talk repeatedly in this episode and in Sins of the Father and stuff about how the council has given up their honor and turned their... So that's where I'm going to take that.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of arbitrary lines with the whole Klingon thing. It's just, it's a mess. It's a mishmash. The whole thing is arbitrary lines. This whole Klingon politics...
So you're saying they need an arbitrator?
Yes. But one who's willing to interfere.
Well, no Klingon could be trusted to do it.
That's true.
Before we go to...
That I believe. But that got to my thing with like...
I don't believe because Worf could be trusted, and there have got to be other honorable Klingons like him.
Well, and that's my thing is like they keep talking about, well, it's honorable, but this is the way it works, so we have to do it, and da-da-da. I'm like... None of these things are consistent at all. Because, and I've said this before, Worf has a philosophy of honor that he has developed for himself. Yeah. Not
not necessarily made up, but based on Klingon principles as they're said to be, not how they in reality are. And these other Klingons like to speak about honor without being honorable, which is politicians.
Right, I was going to say, that's not necessarily a Klingon
What
thing.
we're seeing is the political class. So
Yes.
if you take the political class, I'm sorry this is cynical, but the political class is usually not very honorable.
Well, and to be fair, again, to go back to 1990 and definitely before that, and to a certain extent now, although it's getting better, women weren't allowed to serve then either. I mean, they did, but it was a very
we still
small
can't
number.
elect a woman president.
Yeah.
I mean, we can by votes, but not by our antiquated rules.
All right.
If we just ignored the antiquated rules and did what was honorable and right.
Exactly, but tradition.
So,
And by tradition, I mean...
Tradition.
Yeah.
The white male privilege tradition.
That's it.
There
Now
you
you
go.
got it.
I want to say a couple great points there. First of all, Jimmy, the expert devil's advocate move of the they were so corrupt that they didn't allow women on the council. I like that explanation. And the thing about there not being any Klingons that could be trusted, any Klingons that they know, any Klingons that would be qualified to be around them to have ascended there.
Yeah.
Well, so they talk about how Lursa and Betor are feared. And so, again, even if you're not allowing them on the council, and we've seen this in our own history, there were times where we said women didn't have the right to vote, women couldn't do all these things. And yet, if you actually look historically, there were strong, powerful women still wielding influence and getting things done before they were allowed to. And Lursa and Betor are perfect examples.
Yeah, well, like Woodrow Wilson's wife.
Yeah.
There's,
You mean Mrs. Wilson?
Mrs. Wilson was, I mean, he had a stroke. He was essentially incapacitated for a long time. She was pretty much...
Eleanor Roosevelt.
Eleanor
the
Roosevelt.
women's
That's where I was going
suffrage.
next. Yep. Yeah.
I mean, Phyllis Schlafly. No, I'm
Yeah.
kidding. She's awful. But a lot of her contemporaries that were featured in that Mrs. America.
Well, and,
series,
you know,
which is
again, to get back to white male privilege, we end up calling them all Lady Macbeths. Any woman who's powerful behind a man,
sure.
they're the Lady Macbeth, which isn't fair.
I've never heard that before.
Oh, all right. Well, I'm telling you now, Keith.
Well, no, I mean, we usually get the more
Maybe it's all the women I've been with.
the more misogynistic Yoko, usually.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
That's a very good one, too. Yeah.
So Picard immediately, when he hears about the Civil War stuff, he's like, look out for the Romulans. There's going to be Romulans. The Romulans are behind it. Which I love because that is such... I was talking to Keith about this, that yes, Next Gen is not serialized storytelling for the most part, but we're starting to see those serialized elements creep in, and this Romulan thing's been ongoing for a while, and I appreciated bringing that back and tying it all together.
Shouldn't we be happy about the Romulans and Klingons getting together peacefully?
Not if they gang up on the Federation.
Fair point.
Would you be happy about your best friend and your wife getting together if they leave you out?
No.
Exactly.
That's
The Klingons being the best friend. Well, no, the Klingons
Actually, you know
are your
what?
wife. The
I might not even be happy if they included me.
but I mean, wait, no, I mean,
That's a different thing.
in that scenario, one of those people would have to be the enemy, though,
Right.
The actual active enemy. So the wife.
Yeah,
is
You're
trying
right, sorry, your bully and your
Yeah,
wife
I'm
get
trying to
together.
figure out who that is.
Your
right
bully
now.
and your wife get together. I'm sorry. There we go. That's called cuckolding.
I thought we had a great dramatic pause stinger right at the cold open, the preventing a civil war.
Yeah.
And I've mentioned this before, where Riker, when there's a dramatic moment like that, he's by Picard, he just stares at its ear. Maybe that does happen in real life.
It might.
I know I would look at somebody like, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
But I don't know if but it looks like he's looking at his ear.
Sure. To see what thoughts are coming out of his brain.
Is it because he's like cheating out toward the camera, so to speak?
And it's for the effect. So I'm not knocking Jonathan Frakes or Riker. It just looks. It's a very stage kind of thing. Yeah, it's very much a stage kind of thing.
There's so we're at the cold open there that Gowron showed up as his capacity as Roddenberry's attorney to prevent the war from happening.
Robert O'Reilly gives another great performance in this episode. I love his arc as Gowron.
He's an entertaining guy.
He's going to continue through DS9 era. We're going to get plenty of Gowron coming up.
That's right.
Can you remind me of where we first saw him or what was going on with him?
The last Klingon episode, he and Duras were the two vying for the head of the council.
Well, the one where Picard was being the mediator or whatever.
Right.
So.
And that's where Worf killed Duras.
Yes.
I enjoyed Worf cornering Gowron in the transporter room.
Yeah.
And Gowron's first reaction, I do not hear the words of a traitor. Which it felt to me like, if anybody's listening, I'm not listening to him. Okay, go ahead and talk, I'll listen to you. But I have to act like I'm not going to listen to you.
My favorite part of that scene is Worf says dismiss to the transporter operator. He hits one button, he's out of there. Like, he was just like, I've been waiting for somebody to say that all day long. Whoopity-doo! He went straight to 10 forward.
See, I took that as, I did not want to be in this room with these two.
That's possible, too. But he was ready.
My favorite part about that was just the reaction work from Gowron as Worf was laying things out. Just the outrage that kept playing across his face, like he was processing these things and then just coming back and going, well, I can't do anything about it. But still, before that, just like the...
Well, he's furious at
you had proof of this?
He's furious at the proof thing interests him because he'd like to discredit Duras. But when he hears the whole council already knew this and they're still supporting Duras, that's where the calculation part comes in. Yeah. And he's disgusted with the council, but then he knows he can't do anything about it. Worf says he believes Gowron to be a man of honor in that scene.
There's been nothing for us.
I feel like he was just trying to butter him up, or he believes whoever his captain picks must be a man of honor. I would like to track how honorable Worf thinks Gowron is over the years as these episodes continue to play out. Because I guarantee you, there will be a point where Worf's like, yeah, no, you're not honorable.
Well, I thought during the episode he kind of came around, but maybe it was that same thing of, oh, this is the thing that makes sense to preserve the planet,
opportunism,
or preserve the Empire.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
I'm just going to say Worf and Gowron will not always see eye to eye. And I'm not talking about part 2.
That was the other thing, to go back to my, how does the Klingons and all that work? Because I was like, well, how does this Empire work? I was like, wait a minute. Nope. The U.S. is friends with plenty of empires. Sure. Or similar kind of...
Gowron's final line in that conversation of saying, well, you live with your decision like a Klingon. To me, I'm like, that is the most ridiculous... It sounds good at first blush, and it falls apart the second you stop and think about it. It was just an excuse to end the conversation.
Well, it is what it is essentially what we said. It's a Klingon
sorry
version.
about your luck. Wish I could help. You like babies for me to kiss? I can do that. So the scene after that is Guinan joining Worf for target practice, which was a fantastic scene. Love Guinan saying, oh yeah, I'll come down to your level 14. And then telling him not to feel bad when she wins because she's like, I've been doing this before you're born. And the whole conversation about Klingons not laughing and Guinan saying, yes, they do, I feel like reinforces what I've been saying about Worf and honor and Klingons.
Yeah, because my thing was, I thought, well, we met his parents and they seemed like people that would laugh.
Yes.
So I feel like he would
his
laugh.
His parents weren't Klingons.
Right, and I feel like, so that was, and maybe he had to overcompensate, and obviously he's in Starfleet, and
I was going to say,
he's still a Klingon.
First of all, I wanted to know, have we ever seen him laugh? I mean, we must have.
I was trying to think of a time.
I don't remember if we've seen him laugh.
Maybe smiling politely?
We may have.
Yeah.
Or even menacingly at certain points.
I wonder what a Klingon stand-up comedian would be like.
He just murders people on stage and everybody laughs.
Yeah. So, to expand...
Oh, these people. Sorry.
That's very
Close
offensive.
Sorry,
I'm 1/16th Klingon.
I apologize to our Klingon speakers.
Yeah.
I'm sorry if I might have offended you.
To expand on something Stephen was touching on just then, something I wanted to talk about, just to translate that to our world as well. I mean, if we're using the minority allegory for Klingons and lots of other cultures and things like that, is that's a good example of how people can look to stereotypes for the wrong kinds of examples.
Yes. Yeah.
Even within their own lives, and assume that this thing that is being presented for mainstream consumption is the thing they have to be to aspire to. Also having to be super serious to compensate in a world where he's the only Klingon. His experience being a Klingon would not lend itself to being something to celebrate and laugh about, because he's always feeling on the outside and missing something. So Guinan, in a way, is saying, no, your heritage. This is where my experience is seeing Klingons being happy with each other and laughing about things like that. And so
she's poking holes in his worldview.
Yes.
I mean, is it kind of the whole thing like big boys don't cry kind of a thing. I think we're moving past that now in the 21st century.
Oh yeah,
but kind of like we got to be tough and silent.
Masculinity.
I don't think Worf is toxically masculine, but I think the Klingons,
a lot of them are.
Yeah, I think they are.
And more to the point, the image of Klingons was toxically masculine,
right?
Not necessarily the reality.
Right.
But I think they touched on what we were talking about in the sense that it's kind of elegant, even the way that Worf just said. I can't remember the exact wording of that. He essentially said that to him being Klingon isn't laughing, just as
right. Yeah.
So,
but yeah, they have to because on a date, there has to be, a sense of humor.
Any bar scene we see with them in it or something like,
I was going to say, Klingons have fun.
Yeah.
They work hard and play hard.
Yeah. I mean, Klingon women list sense of humor always in the top 3 in what they look for in a mate.
But they do find dismemberment funny. So
you're right. It's a different scale.
During that conversation between Guinan and Worf, they go to the trouble of talking about Alexander and him having trouble fitting in on Earth, and then also comparing his struggle to figure out how to be a Klingon to Worf's struggle as an adult to try to be a Klingon, which I think plants a lot of seeds. It reminds us about Alexander, who he is, where he is. It also sets up that if you leave him on Earth, he's going to be an adult and still not know what it is to be a Klingon the way that you are still struggling, which sets the seeds for Worf to bring him back and start working with him.
Well, because I thought where Guinan was going was, well, you turned out pretty good, but she wasn't. She was going a completely different way. Like, you still got some issues based on that. Again, we love Worf's parents, or Worf's foster parents, I guess.
Adopted
parents, yeah.
It's probably not their fault, though.
No, I think they did the best they could, and I think they instilled him clearly with good values and honor.
Yeah.
But they tried to introduce him to his Klingon heritage, but they didn't have the appropriate background and knowledge to do it.
Yeah.
So it will benefit Alexander to be in the orbit of Klingons.
Which I didn't think about till now, but that's essentially the different strokes storyline is if we're doing the racial thing. If we're doing what we talked about.
Yeah, it's funny because Worf and obviously his brother Kern are played by black actors, and I feel like when we talk about Klingons, we often make those racial comparisons. Yeah. And yet, Gowron, the Duras sisters, a lot of that are
which I think is another, the fact that we know that it kind of plays into they're getting away from that mindset.
I think it's good you don't just have one race playing this alien, because then that really sets you up for...
Yeah, then it's... Yeah,
then you're making the allegory blatant.
Yeah.
Took a long time before we got more skin colors and races for Vulcans and Romulans and so forth as well.
Yeah.
But all the original Klingons were white men. And then obviously in the next gen they folded in black men. And eventually they folded in women. And then... I still don't think we've had an Asian Klingon, though. So we need to get on that.
And I just learned it again recently, but George Chakiris played a Klingon, and I thought, well, he is a Latino. No, just because he's in West Side Story, I thought he was Latino.
So we all agree Picard sent Guinan to talk to Worf, right?
We talked about this off mic, but I wrote down, how did Guinan know Worf needed a pep talk? And Jimmy said... Picard sent it, right?
Picard,
I agree.
Picard tried to pep talk him, failed. And then as soon as Guinan went, he goes to Picard because Worf clearly knew that Guinan sent him.
What?
Yeah.
See, I don't.
That Picard sent Guinan.
Do you think she sensed it? And I don't mean in a forced kind of way. But.
It didn't occur to me either way. Honestly, I thought that it was maybe it was a gossip tree thing. I just didn't really think it through. I think your theory is valid, though. So
Picard and Guinan are besties. If it was coincidence, it's a huge coincidence.
They kept talking about right of succession. That's right, R-I-T-E, not R-I-G-H-T.
Correct.
Right? It took me a while. I couldn't...
Yes.
I thought they were using it interchangeably for a while.
No, they're doing the rites. Which are ceremonies.
That makes sense.
Right, the cloak and everything.
But they're very... But the way they said it, I felt like the way some of them declared it was like, it's the right of succession. Like, it is my right. It's like, no. Yeah, okay. But that makes sense.
The target practice thing reminded me again of how hard it is for me to visualize aiming a phaser with that level of precision.
Yeah,
and it's just the thing we're used to thinking of what guns look like and how you shoot from the hip that way either.
Right,
but you can kind of do it, but you don't see them with it's really not that different a concept, I guess.
It's
You're
kind of
using your thumb instead of your pointer.
It's very much like I prefer the old phaser, but that's also nostalgia and TOS bias. But yeah, it makes sense that probably would be a better aim.
Your thumb's probably stronger too.
Yeah, because
I don't know.
we'll have to get a gun expert on here to tell us about it.
Probably wouldn't have the recoil anyway with the laser. I don't know.
I don't think.
Oh,
it'll
that-
have
yeah.
the recoil, no.
Yeah.
Video game kids.
Yeah.
Phasers. Worf requests leave following this conversation with Picard, and yet for the rest of the episode until the very end, he keeps his uniform on. Even when he's serving on Klingon ships and acting, firing on other Klingon ships and stuff, he keeps the Starfleet uniform on, which I guess is supposed to be symbolic, but it also feels wrong. If he's on leave, he should be in civilian clothes. The same way if Picard goes on vacation, he takes off his uniform.
Yeah. Yeah, he should have been in Klingon
I
casual.
felt like keeping the uniform on was the whole conflict, was just exacerbating the conflict of interest.
Yeah.
Good catch.
And to lead to that dramatic ending, which I don't want to give away yet.
I enjoyed Worf and Kern reconnecting and their conversation, and Kern saying, "You need to do this," and Worf being like, "Nope, you need to do this," and Kern being like, "Nope," and then Worf's like, "I'm the older brother," and then Kern, they both have like times where they're thinking about it. I
Yeah.
just like the whole exchange.
That was a
Yeah.
good scene.
I liked Kern coming around. I really like their relationship, and the more I see them together, the more I want to see them together.
Yeah.
I agree. Yeah. Somebody says, I think it's, maybe I'm jumping ahead. I think maybe it's the mysterious Romulan says, everything is proceeding as I have scheduled, which is very Emperor from everything is proceeding just as I have foreseen.
Yeah.
Which he says when he shows up on the second Death Star in the Return of the Jedi because it's behind schedule. So I felt like that was very much schedule. Yes,
Schedule.
I have to say schedule since.
Yeah, that is definitely jumping ahead.
Yeah, sorry.
That's okay. Yep, Dirk Kern wants to replace the entire High Council. Not
Yeah.
necessarily a bad idea once we see how many of them side with the Duroses.
So were they the High Council, or were they just like troops that were there to
I
support
believe that
people?
was supposed to be the High Council. It's kind of like now everybody's like, we should just get rid of all of Congress and start over.
Throw all the bums out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Keep a few of them.
Except in this case, most of them were bums. Most of them were the Marjorie Taylor Greens and the Ted Cruzes.
Yeah.
So this is when we are introduced to the great Lursa and Betor, played by Barbara March and Gwyneth Walsh. Barbara March is best known for this role, which she will play in further in Next Gen, DS9, and Generations.
Oh, wow.
She'll do, besides part 2, she's in one more episode of Next Gen, the movie Generations, and one episode of DS9 as well. She only has 13 credits on IMDb, so not a lot beyond that. Gwyneth Walsh, the other one, is best known for this role as well, but she was also in Stargate SG-1 and The Crush, and she has 132 credits.
Oh, wow.
So very different amounts of work. It's funny they chose and she'll also be in the same episode DS9, the same additional episode Next Gen, and the same movie as her sister. But I think it's interesting they chose the more experienced actress to be basically the sidekick to the lead sister. I mean, not that they are more partnerish, but Lursa seems to be a little bit in charge. I will say Betor's actress will play a different role in an episode of Voyager as well. But no Seinfeld credits.
That's where I was going.
Control F does wonders. They come forward and they have discovered that Duras had a son, played by J.D. Cullum, best known for Leatherheads, Forever Young, The Lone Ranger, the 2013 version, Glory. He's got 81 credits. Looks like he's still active. He actually was recently in an episode of The Orville. His Trek credits are just this two-parter.
Okay.
No Seinfeld. So, yeah, it seems very convenient they found the son, but it sounds like, it's possible they faked the genetics, but it reminds me of like Game of Thrones where they're looking for all of Robert's bastards. They found his bastard son somewhere. And man, he's just a young, upstart jerk of a kid, isn't he? Way overconfident. Ridiculous.
And I guess maybe in the Klingon Empire, there's probably a lot of these Bastard. Well, you know what? In our empire, there's a lot of these bastard kids.
So that's when we see a Romulan, and it's the same shadowy Romulan, still in the shadows. She just can't find a good light source. I really think the lighting designers needed to be better at their job.
It was on purpose.
I get why they kept her in the shadows for the big reveal
That's
at
funny,
the end,
though.
which we'll talk about when we get to the end. But at the same time, it does feel artificial and contrived that they're keeping her in the shadows.
Yeah. Like if she had a condition that she had to stay in the dark.
And I don't think Lursa, when she stayed in the shadows for Geordi, that made sense because Geordi would have recognized her.
Mm-hmm.
When she stays in the shadows for Lursa and Betor know who she is, right? They've talked to her, they've seen her.
Right.
Maybe.
They have to. So that doesn't make so much sense. We get Worf on the bridge asking Data to help him find Kittimer records, even though he's not on duty, and Picard's like, dude, no.
Right, what are you doing here?
Yeah, get out of this.
You're bad at vacation.
So was it kind of a cop-out that Picard's like, don't do this, but here's the records, I'll make them public for anybody who wants to see them?
He reconsidered, and it's just kind of...
I guess his thing was if everyone has them, then it's okay.
I don't know, the whole lecture about we need to straddle the line felt patronizing and just not quite cohesive to his actions.
That's, I think that's a good example of where they needed to pare that down and give the other crew members a chance to do something, as you were saying.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, that could have been condensed into I don't know. Well, I can see why this would be useful. This is as much as I can do.
Yeah.
That was like the essential part of that. This is as far as I can go.
20-some years before, the stories would have been that Shatner wanted all those lines, and he took them from everyone else.
Yeah. I don't think Patrick Stewart was
I don't
doing
think so
that,
either.
no.
But
The Duras sisters invite Picard over, and they give him Earl Grey and rub his head.
here's my question. And I have two questions here. One, is the one sister hornier than the other?
Betor? Definitely.
Two, do you think in the Klingon world, the smoother the head, the sexier they find it?
Oh, that's interesting.
I mean, that could
Or would it be the opposite?
exotic in some way. I mean, I hadn't really thought
Or
of it that
just
way.
a kind of a fetishy kind of thing. Okay.
That's a good
Because the way at first when she did it, I'm like, oh, that seems evil. And I was like, no, that seems horny. That seems sexual. So he might have the perfect head. And that's another reason they trust him is like, that head. He's exposing his scalp.
Yeah.
And then...
That's very interesting.
Yeah.
Huh.
So,
Picard definitely has their number, though. Which is... I mean, I still think if it was Kirk, he would have slept with Betor first.
yes. Yes.
As he should have.
Yes. He would have hung out. He wasn't going to be in a hurry. He would not have been in a hurry to get out of there.
No.
He'd be like, well, I'm trying to get information. This is my first fashion. The Duras sisters, of course. My question is, obviously, they're showing their breasts to an extent.
To an extent.
They all have the middle cleavage.
The circular boob window.
Which lately there was a big thing of women wearing their bikini tops upside down, so they would get more of that middle cleavage. So hat tip to the Duras sisters for that. Yeah, they're definitely intriguing. Their look was different, and I couldn't remember if the Klingon women we've met previously in TNG have had that look.
Well, I think the only one we've really met is Kalar, and she didn't wear the military garb.
Picard went to the ship, and she was in military.
Oh,
in
Military
military garb.
Well, Riker.
Yes.
Sorry,
Exchange program.
Riker. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So maybe since they're civilians.
Yeah, it seems a bit more like business casual. Or it's a status symbol of sorts. They are maybe what that time period would consider being empowering.
Yes.
Overtly sexual.
She did not. The one in the Riker episode, the Klingon woman, did not have the boob window. Yeah. So Kern's true identity being revealed was kind of a throwaway little minute. They're just like, "Oh, Kern's your brother? Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's move on." I mean, the great Tony Todd makes me want to see more of Kern, but I guess in the scheme of things, that wasn't a moment they need to spend a lot of time on.
I guess it hadn't occurred to me how much each person knew about what was going on. I thought that it was sort of understood along with the cover-up that, oh yeah, that's who that is.
Mm-hmm. Gowron's office on his flagship is in the same place Picard's office is on the Enterprise D. Did you notice when he comes out on the bridge?
No.
It's that same front. If you're looking at the view screen, front left corner is where the door to his office is, just like Picard's ready room.
That was odd.
Well, they were sitting in orbit of the planet.
Oh, maybe is that what? Maybe that's what it was.
They weren't traveling anywhere.
Maybe that makes sense.
What do you think the significance was of there being a similar layout? I mean,
Ease, convenience.
Yeah.
For set wise, or
Yes.
Yeah.
I thought it was also interesting that Gowron's on one of the new Klingon warships. We mostly see the old ones from the films.
Yes.
And then he's on the new class. But his bridge looked like the old bridges from the films.
Yes. Yeah.
Clearly a budget thing of we're not going to build a new fancy bridge.
And I will say, I've often talked about how much I love the bird of prey, the Romulan bird of prey, but I've grown to really like the Klingon ships too. They make sense. And maybe it's just 40 some years of this.
Yeah.
That it's like, oh yeah, when I see that I think Klingon. Well, yeah, of course I do.
Yeah.
But I like their look. I still love the Romulan bird of prey.
Sure. Picard just abandons Worf and Gowron when the shooting starts. I guess, but it does seem cold.
Yeah, he said.
Riker's even like, what about Worf?
He says, "What about Worf?" And I guess Picard and I felt the same way because it's like, that's what I say. What about him?
I think Picard just needed to echo Gowron's line from earlier in the episode. You live with your decision.
yeah, he told him what to do, and he didn't do it. So
Worf's very tactical, of course. He mentions the Kelly.
that's what I had.
Kelly cans.
I had Kelly cans. I wasn't sure.
Kelly
if that's
cans. I guess it's a unit of measurement the Klingons use,
Oh,
like kilometers or
Gotcha.
something.
Well, I was going to ask you about it, but
I assume. I don't know for sure. Of course, Kern zooms into the rescue, and the Enterprise comes back once the coast is clear. Gowron then returns Worf's honor, even though he said he wasn't going to do it. And then Kern, who was supposed to be waiting for it to happen to intervene, went ahead and intervened.
right.
So, I guess at this point, though, once Duras betrays Gowron, the Duras sisters, and the Duras starts the Civil War,
Yeah.
there's no reason to protect their honor.
Right.
So
I wrote, is that an undiscommendation?
yeah.
I did look that up. That is not a word.
anti-discommendation of establishmentarianism.
Discommendation?
Picard orders Worf to return to duty, and Worf resigns his commission.
Yeah. Throws down his badge and his gun. No, he just throws down his
the badge. Yeah, he kept his phaser. It'd be funny, in the Orville version of this, he puts his phaser and then he pulls out a knife and then he pulls out something else, and he lays like all these weapons on the table. Worf resigning felt like a season finale stunt, and maybe it's the cynical version of me.
Yeah. I mean,
just maybe.
I think it leads to a nice war Picard scene, even though it definitely felt like, okay, we're gonna kind of shoehorn this in. I thought back to Best of Both Worlds, where it was like, I knew Picard was coming back, and I know Worf's coming back.
From a logical perspective, I feel like Worf probably should have resigned his commission earlier in the episode, but they had to save it for the end for dramatic effect.
Right, yeah. So I agree with you. It felt a little forced.
And that's when he finally changed his clothes.
Yeah, that's my other fashion note, which is when Worf changes his clothes, especially his shoes, he looks like he's part of the Kiss Army.
So
And he might be.
Yeah. It's a good point about him having, or being more appropriate for him having resigned earlier, and they're maybe forcing a little bit. Well, obviously doing this for the drama, or the dramatic effect. Which brings me to my last point, which was, it seemed like Picard should have taken that up with Starfleet Command. This doesn't seem like a captain's decision to make.
Yeah.
I mean, they always give us that kind of their prerogative to do certain things, but this was. It seems like a pretty high level political issue.
I assume Picard did talk to Command. And I assume before he even went into this, like, he had briefed them on this Civil War chances, and Command was like, yeah, don't
do that.
anything. Picard really seems to be trying until he goes to talk to Worf for the final time, when Worf resigns and Picard's not looking happy, it feels like Picard wants Worf to handle this exactly the way that he wants him to handle it. And that's why this whole episode, anytime Worf deviates from this narrow line that Picard has laid out as the right one, he's judgmental about it. I do think he makes it up for that a little bit in that final scene when he goes and talks to Worf in his quarters, but it felt patronizing again.
I will give Picard credit. Both times he came into Worf's quarters, he said, "Am I intruding?" Which is rarely happens on the Enterprise in either set of shows we've watched.
I did like their last heart-to-heart.
Yeah.
Saying, are you sure this is what you want to do?
Yeah.
And basically, I support you.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I said, it was contrived to get into that, but I thought it was a good scene.
This goodbye for Worf with the row of officers and then the senior staff of the transporter. Yeah. It was nice. Where was Guinan? Where was O'Brien?
Yeah.
They were on duty.
Why wasn't it just a cluster of yellow shirts that were Worf's staff by the transporter room? Why was it the mix?
Well, there was a whole set of ladies, which I think are ladies he dated.
Ah, yeah.
Yeah, so.
And then there was the ghost of the old woman he killed. Well, that's Scrubs. When Scrubs walks through the final hallway, never mind. Yeah, I mentioned it before, but it just felt odd that the senior staff was there and Troy and Crusher don't even get to say anything.
Right.
At least give them a couple of lines there.
Yeah.
So that you could have taken away a Picard scene earlier that didn't really fit and let the senior staff each say like one thing to him.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, you could have had a bunch of great moments.
Yeah.
And I mean, maybe they think, well, we don't want to cheapen all of these scenes when we change it right back next season, but still.
That's actually a really good point. Do they think the audience is going to buy it anyway? Do we want to waste all these and every time we want to do a little fake out stunt or something?
Yeah.
So.
And then we end with the revelation of the Romulans stepping out of the shadow and saying something about, you never know when a human's going to show up when you least expect them
That's
to.
hilarious.
And then this half human, half Romulan that looks just like Tasha Yar for some reason that we don't know yet. That we do know, but we don't know yet.
A slightly worse haircut.
Well, only slightly.
I was going to say much worse, but I was like,
Now, Keith doesn't remember the circumstances, so we're not going to get into who that is because they did not name them or give
I
them
thought you were going to say how Tasha Yar died.
Well, we know how Tasha Yar died. She got eaten by the black slime ball. But,
So you're saying if I did remember, you would talk about it anyway for the audience and ruin it for them?
Yes, because at this point, this episode aired like 30, 40 years ago.
But they're following along with this for the first time.
Hopefully somebody is.
Maybe somebody is. Yeah, so we know who it is, but that was very shocking. I think if I didn't already know she was going to be in the episode because she was in the previous and we'd read, and the stupid shadowy scene earlier in the episode, if they just revealed Denise Crosby as this Romulan at the end, I'd be pretty darn shocked. And I think the shock value is not there because of exterior things.
Is it possible she was always out of light because of that haircut?
Because they're like, you're so ugly, we don't want to light you up.
She's just like, I'm hideous, look away.
I was shocked, or at least I was surprised again.
Yeah.
I could feel like, wait, it was like, I know I've seen her look like that before.
Yeah.
Some of it's coming back, but that still, I must have managed to push away everything else up to that point.
She'll be in part 2, and she'll also be in an additional episode or 2 after this, so we will get the who this is, where they came from, all of that.
I have a bunch of a couple general questions and some rando notes.
Okay.
As always, I love the matte shots of in this case, of the Klingon world. I thought those were cool. They talk about squadrons in the Klingon. It's like, I'm in charge of the squadron. And I can't remember ever seeing fighter planes in the way we think of squadrons.
Well, they talk about
like
universe.
clusters, of,
like X-wing fighters or whatever.
They talk
B-52s.
about 4 squadrons controlling 7 sectors of space, which is a pretty big area.
So I guess they're talking about
spread out. Yeah. But there's probably like, this is my sector. Like, I'm the regional manager for this area.
And that makes sense. That's what they call squadrons. Yeah, in my mind, it just made me think of we never see.
And then Rainn Wilson plays the assistant to the regional manager.
I was waiting to jump in there with it.
But whenever there's a battle, it's starship, and of course they're
right
across from each other because they can't possibly be on different planes in space. But there are never any small snub fighters or anything to.
So I had a thought about that different planes. If the 2 ships are going to fight and they're flying directly at each other, they're going to be coming on the same plane.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
if they point and they're flying towards each other, wherever they were before, that will automatically make them on the same plane.
To some extent,
Oh,
yes,
that's true.
but the camera work always makes it seem like it's
They're
to
flat,
our
yeah.
Right.
horizontal plane.
Do starships generally need to have their exterior lights on? They're flying along, and Picard's like, "Put it on the view screen." I'm like, "What were they looking at before then?" So at that point, we're like, "Oh, they don't fly by the windshield,
Right.
if you will."
What do you
They're
mean by exterior lights then?
Like, why do you need those on? Do you need those to see?
I mean, most of the lights we see on the ship are interior lights shining through windows.
Which is,
But there are a
which
few
answers part of my
exterior
question. But I feel like,
running
I mean, so there are other ones that it's like you don't need those on except for dramatic when you're leaving the dry dock.
I would think that people at their consoles would have a view of the outside too. I mean, they would have to like see where they're.
The bridge doesn't have any exterior windows except the dome at the top.
Well, no,
But, like-
I'm saying that what they're putting on the view screen is still probably the camera shot from the outside that the people
Yeah.
navigating will probably see as well.
Right, because
Yeah.
like your headlights on the Enterprise aren't going to really illuminate the Klingon ship. It's the light from a star or bouncing
Yeah.
off a moon or whatever.
Yeah.
So
I see what you're saying. The starships are extraordinarily well lit in an unrealistic fashion.
yeah, I noticed especially in this episode, and I loved it. It looks great. It looks awesome.
Well, maybe
But I
maybe
don't
that's
know
for
if
the benefit of the people who don't crash into them and stuff.
Well,
Or safety
and that could
regulations.
be. That could be. If you don't have a cloaking device. So yeah, it just made me think of that. I mean, like airplanes have the certain set of lights so they don't
Yep.
smash each other, but I guess I don't know. I mean, I guess pilots don't necessarily just trust their windshield. They've got all their
Yeah, the navigator,
things
their
too.
panel doesn't have a picture. It has sensor readings.
right.
and
Yeah, I
stuff.
guess that makes sense.
Ooh, asteroids or whatever things come up. I mean, you would.
Yeah, they play asteroids on it when they're born.
No, you would think that something would happen,
ding,
just
ding,
in
ding,
case.
ding, ding.
Hey, there's a person floating out there. Just something
There's
to kind
a
of.
giant hand coming through space.
There's a Tholian web.
There's Abraham Lincoln just sitting there.
These things would be completely wasted on everybody. They didn't have their windows to view screens up. I mean, the sensor's not going to show them it looks like Abraham Lincoln.
Yeah,
so
but
they
if
have to-
there's, but you got to think, Keith, if there's a giant vampire coming at them, the camera probably wouldn't show that, right? Kind of like how they don't reflect in mirrors.
There were probably prior starships that went right by, and they're like, "I'm right here. I'm giant Abraham Lincoln in space. How did they not see me?"
The sensor sweep was pointing the other way as they were going past. So it just
Somebody looked out the window and saw it, but they were at warp speed. Like,
Yeah.
what was that? No, it couldn't have been.
Something about hiding behind human excuses. That's the name of
Those
my
gal run.
That's the name of my autobiography. Is hiding behind human
so not sex tape then.
right. And maybe it's a silly question to ask, but what do regular Klingons do?
And anything they want.
Like, are they militaristic all the way through, or that's just the only people
They
we
have
meet?
chefs, they have farmers. they
Tailors.
have- yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It makes-
Do we know that?
We just,
Yes.
we just never get to meet them, I guess.
No, I think we're made aware of like Klingon farmers and stuff at some point.
So we kind of touched on it earlier when we were talking about
Some
like
of them vineyards.
they couldn't find trustworthy Klingons, and so we were saying that they're just not the politicians. So
Right.
Yeah,
what do they do?
The real Klingons out in rural Klingon. wilderness.
God. But it just occurred to me is Picard went and made a point of addressing the council in Klingon. What does this translator do at that point? Mm-hmm. How do they know to switch those things off, or are they hearing Klingon anyway usually, or are they always hearing English, or what, you know, that kind of thing?
Yeah.
Again, I like it when they speak Klingon and there's not subtitles.
Oh, I like the subtitles.
I mean, I'm okay with that, but I kind of like is like
Discovery, they don't have subtitles more than I'd like.
Yeah.
I like to see the
Yeah.
subtitles.
I thought they usually had them in Discovery.
Usually, but not
well, that
always.
should be a challenge to you to learn Klingon.
I had the Klingon dictionary when I was a kid,
Yeah.
and I did not learn it.
Yeah.
Would you
But I'm not good with foreign languages, so.
would you assume that when they don't have subtitles, they're actually speaking real Klingon from like the dictionary and everything else? When they're oh, my last thing was alternate episode title, which would be the Consolation of Moog, the Desolation of Smaug.
Yes, my alternate episode is Worf's like, I'm done with all these stupid politicians. I'm going to murder Gowron and I'll be the Chancellor.
My alternate episode is, especially with the death of Joanne Linville, rest in peace. It's because I've always gone to bat for the Romulans. It's a Romulan version of Veep with JLD, Julia Louis-Dreyfus, as
She
a
needs to be on the
Romulan.
Orville.
Yeah, as a Romulan
wow.
council person, I would. I mean, obviously, I'd watch it as JLD, but
Sure.
yeah. So that was my alternate.
Man, she'd be a great. Yes. Who was your annoyance? Mine's obviously Catal, Duralsa's bastard son. He was.
That's where I ended up going.
Oh, man.
I was gonna go with my usual answer of every Klingon that wasn't Worf, The Duras sisters didn't annoy me.
But they were great.
Yeah.
Picard was annoying me a little bit. But
Yeah.
I
thought about that too.
I was going to pick a Picard based upon your assessments as we went along. Too.
Do it.
So, yeah.
I'm going with the boy who we became.
Yeah.
Because
he was a total Joffrey.
I couldn't think of...
Oh, I was about to say it.
There was some other annoying kid that he reminded me of, like...
Oh,
Yeah. So...
who are you having a drink with?
The Duras sisters.
If you had to pick one.
Bator.
If I had to pick one, I also went into that. Is she the same one that slapped the kid in the face? Or is that the other sister?
I think Lursa slept.
Ooh.
See,
That's
now
a tough
it's a
call,
tie.
isn't it?
Now I'm back to it. Because I was
Keith and I are taking Betor, so you should take Lursa.
you know, I can go with that.
I'll let you have the Draw sisters though, because they're back and shit.
I appreciated her slapping that kid.
Yeah.
That makes it tough, doesn't
That
it?
put her in first place, but then the other one...
I like the strong powerfulness of Lursa, but I also liked the sexiness of Betor.
Yeah.
So those actresses are so good. I'm so glad that not only did they see the wisdom of using them in a couple more episodes, but putting them in one of the films. Because,
that's awesome.
Well, but Tor's, she's very considerate. She's warm as tea for him and everything.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Oh.
Okay, ranking the episode. Let's go ahead and rank it first against the other Klingon episode this season, where Kalar came back and Duras was killed.
Oh,
that was
wow.
this season, yes.
Yeah.
Reunion.
Wow.
Better or worse than Reunion?
Oh, that's close. That's...
They're both very, very good. I want to go above as much as I love Kalar because there's so much going on in this. This is a very dense episode.
What's above it?
The Wounded. I would probably go below The Wounded.
I'm at the recency bias at this point where I'm kind of like, Wounded. What's
The
Wounded?
Wounded was tight. Yeah, I want to go below The Wounded, above Reunion. That's my opinion.
I'm going to let Keith potentially put me on the spot. I will go last.
What is above The Wounded?
Family.
I'm surprised we put it that high now in
It was
light of
so
everything
good.
else.
It was so good.
Especially coming off the best of both worlds.
And giving them time to process what happened, I think is why
I thought that was the best.
And it was just perfect. All the B stories and everything. It was.
I feel like there were episodes I enjoyed more throughout the season than that, but enjoyment isn't necessarily.
I will step in and say I would not go above that for sure.
Yeah.
But
so we're not going above Family. Keith, The Wounded, Reunion. Family's number 1, so we can't go any higher. If you're curious, below
we're
Reunion
already
is
up
Best
that
of Both
high.
Worlds Part 2. Yeah, I started at number 3.
yeah.
Because that's the other Klingon episode. The past 2 seasons, the Klingon episode, seasons 1 through 3, only had 1 Klingon episode per season, and it always came at number 2 for the year. I'm arguing to put this one number 3. The other one's already number 3, so
No, all right. I think I'm going to go below The Wounded. I'm trying to unpack it in my head, and the Cardassian stuff was pretty good. The crew integration, things like that. There were a lot of moments like that were just.
So you and I are on the same page.
This
there.
one, yeah.
So you're going above Reunion, below The Wounded?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we picked the same.
I would have gone below, but...
You would have gone below Reunion?
Yeah.
Above Best of Both Worlds Part 2?
Yeah, probably.
I think I actually would put it below Reunion. I'm just, I know, it's so close. I don't.
I think so too.
It depends on which way I'm looking at it and when.
There were a few things that bothered me about the way they did Reunion, so I can't fight you too much.
I know. If I really started thinking about it again, I'd probably just.
Okay, we'll put this at number 4. That's fine. We all agree the Klingons belong 3 and 4, the top.
Yeah. I would not have... Past me would not believe that current me would be enjoying these Klingon episodes.
Next week, the recap episode of Season 4. We break down our best, our worst, who we wanted to have drinks with, all of that. And
You said best or worst, not best Star Wars. That's what I thought they said at first. I was like, recap our best Star Wars. I was like, what?
No. Redemption is better than all Star Wars movies. So, we'll be back next week to wrap up our season before we take our break. Until then, live long.
And prosper.
Choked. Almost.
It's All Been Done presents.
Who's got the time?